So this week's episode of Blade the Immortal, I can definitely say for myself, we're back on the right track. Last week I had my fun with it, but with the introduction to so many characters at the beginning of last week's episode, it felt like we were skim reading a book, just maybe seeing content that we should have saw already, but they needed to cram it in somewhere, so it just kind of felt a little jarring. But with this week's episode, it's a lot more focused, a lot more structured, and it has a pretty clear path that it wants to go down. The characters that we got introduced to last week, we get a decent amount of time with them to actually see their personality pass an intro kill, something like that, like we did get with the previous episode. But this episode really does showcase the brutality and kind of with Rin and how she definitely doesn't belong in this world, and I think she is just someone who's not a part of this world. She can't get her hands dirty. She's not going to be someone who's going to survive by herself. And even though that may be true, I mean, you can especially say that she would have died if Manji wasn't there at the end of the episode, but I do feel like we're starting to see the progression that she's recognizing that she has been a fool, that she does need to do more than just, pretend she's going to be a good swordsman or something like that. She does have to understand the vileness of this world, and I think Hsieh has been a great representation of how brutal the samurai will be. I mean, the whole message in this episode about, not trusting a samurai, as the one woman this episode mentions, how do not fall in love with a samurai, kind of indicating that her own past is a great representation of why she doesn't have a family anymore. It's all those little moments that help really build it up as being something so heartbreaking. Honestly, my favorite part about Rin as a whole is how she almost feels like if you removed her from this story, I actually don't think this series would be as interesting as it is. I know a lot of people like to say she is kind of like a damsel in distress. She doesn't basically do anything to aid a battle or things like that, but how could she? She was not a part of this world until recently, and until probably the end of the series, I doubt she will be a killer swordsman like someone like Manji, because I assume over time she'll naturally gain combat abilities. But for her to match him in strength after how many kills he's had just wouldn't make sense. But if you removed her obliviousness from this tale, I feel like everything would feel too cold, as if everyone's too used to the vileness of how there will be people who will just enjoy torturing and degrading women before he kills them or violates them, right? It's having that painful realization of what this world really represents. It's good to have a character like her and actually watch the progression of an innocent girl who lost everything and how she's over time going to probably become cold herself, or at least become numb enough that a scene like this won't shock her, but rather she'll probably just put that guy in a hole, kill him without a moment's notice, because she doesn't want to see something like that occur. I really doubt Ren's going to be the type of character who will just, let something like that pass by. I assume if she does gain skills in combat, she will just kill people who commit these types of atrocities. But it still is nice to watch how this episode played out, especially with how much we did get from her perspective. I mean, the man that everyone's basically hunting is kind of amazing, I have to say. So he's cross-dressing to basically get past his gate, and his whole plan, I have to say, was pretty brutal. I mean, sending so many different prostitutes to basically spread their forces thin as they can basically figure out who is the mole, who should they basically kill, and then he can continue on his days, things like that. And just that buildup was so damn good, especially because there was just so much dialogue before that of them just sitting around drinking some sake and things like that. How they almost had a slumber party with Rin, and just all those little moments, the dialogue being these are characters you don't want to trust, you probably don't want to have dinner with, but at the same time their goals are kind of aligning, so probably it makes sense to work together, at least temporarily, to root out the cause of so much harm and damnation, right? And to just see that buildup of seeing so many just hard to look at scenes, because once you realize one is a fake, you realize that they all are, and you're seeing just men who are trying to protect their women or their clients, things like that, and you're just seeing so much brutality because they have to make sure this isn't the person, because they were cross-dressing. So you're seeing half-naked women, you're seeing bloodied up men, you're seeing bloodied up women, right? You're seeing all these things, realizing that they were all played. It's where is the real one? And then to see just what Hsieh was doing towards the end of the episode, it was even more vile than last week with the whole feeding you a dog and just, proving a point that you're not ready for this world. What is wrong with this dude's mind? But I'm so happy he's a part of this series. I'm glad he just lost a hand, because I do want to see him incorporated in more arcs in the future. He is vile, he is ruthless, he is everything I despise as a person, However, having him really contrast and go against like Rin's mentality, that pure and innocent mind, it really does lend itself to be pretty goddamn disturbing and really let Blade the Immortal flourish as something more than just everything's gonna be okay. No, everything is not gonna just be okay. And I did like how, even though you knew she wasn't going to be able to stab him in the back, I did like how she drew her sword. Yes, if Manji wasn't there, she would have died. However, it does prove to me that she is starting to realize that she can't just wait by, she needs to take action into her own hands. Does she need to get better? Does she need to think things through more? Absolutely. In hindsight, she could probably say, even though there is this whole honor code thing, honestly, if I was her, what I would have done is I would have drew the blade very silently and snuck up behind him and stabbed him and said, screw honor. This man clearly has no honor. However, I do think this is going to be the turning point of her progressively getting more comfortable about the world she's in, not just throwing up at the sight of everything that is an atrocity, but rather getting that reaction, that gut feeling that she needs to do something about it. No longer just being like, I'm going to boost my skills and be a master swordsman. No, you're gonna have to take a lot of time with that, and I honestly expect she won't be able to be even a match or at least get a couple of swings in against someone like Manji until the end of the anime. However, I think that's not a bad thing. She just needs to be able to at least deflect a sword, be able to at least hold her own a tad before someone like Manji can actually have the master swordsman's battle. Unless it's just a casual bandit, things like that. Sure, I could see her dealing with that. But it is going to be interesting to see that progression. But I have to say, even though last week we got introduced to so many characters that it felt like skim reading a book, this episode did give them at least a chance to get some dialogue in, get some personality in, and I am excited to see where this group is going to go, especially with some of their combat. Like, the girl had like a crossbow on her arm, which was a killer assassin tool, I have to say. And it's going to be very fun to see how they're going to be implemented in the future, because this isn't a group of nice people, right? They're all going to have their pros and cons, and I'm really curious to see how far they're going to push this group and where Manji and Rin are going to go. Though, with how brutal the episode was, I did get a dark laugh out of the end of the episode where Manji realizes, like, oh shit, I'm going to get blamed for this, let's get the hell out of here. As basically there's just blood and despair as far as the eye can see, and then Rin has to patch up the woman's breast and hopefully have her survive. It's like, there is so much carnage, but I really do appreciate how the amount of blood, the amount of like body parts that get thrown in the air, or just the atrocities that these men will commit towards women, it doesn't feel like they're like glorifying it just to be edgy or things like that. It actually does feel like the brutality, the vileness that we do see on screen, it actually, if it was toned down, I don't think it would have that gut reaction, that feeling of like, you want to vomit, you want to be stabbing these characters for what they're doing. It actually does feel like they go so far into it, but not to the point where it feels like it loses its edge. It's actually a good balance of getting that gut reaction without being like, oh, you're just trying to get a reaction, not caring about the substance of the writing. No, the writing naturally is lending itself to be vile, so it's nice to see the visual presentation also do that as well. I've been a big fan of this anime ever since episode 1, and even though episode with last week was the first time I was really like, okay, this isn't feeling all that right, but I still had fun with it. It was nice to see that this episode, even if we do get a couple of episodes where maybe the direction or the pacing, it kind of throws me off, it does feel like it is going to lead to something better in the future, which at the very least, I mean, you're adapting how many chapters, how many manga volumes. Of course, there's going to be times where everyone's going to feel iffy. Maybe you'll feel iffy every single week, or maybe you'll be like me, and only every so often will it make you raise an eyebrow to be like, huh, this kind of feels like we're missing something here. But to see with last week, with the issues I did have, and what we ultimately got with this week, I'm perfectly fine with the missteps with last week's episode, and it was still a fun episode to me, but this was actually a pretty great episode, I'd go as far to say. Obviously, I don't expect I will be the majority opinion as always, but I have a lot of fun with this series, and hopefully more people keep having fun along with me. It's quite nice that we did get a very brief moment with Taito and just what happened to someone he cared for. There was a moment where he was basically gripping his ankle as he was sitting on the cold floor looking at a dead girl who he definitely cared for, and he was just squeezing it so hard, holding in his emotion as someone yells at him saying, this is all your fault, never come back here. We had to put her in such a gross place just so her body would be preserved because we know how much she loved you. I do like this character a whole lot. We see so much brutality, so much violence. It's nice to have someone who fits into that category of what he's done, what he'll probably do in the future, and then seeing such humanity and grief of someone who he never wanted this to happen to, but probably has done very similar things to how many men, how many women, how many families in his own life. And it's like, It's those moments that show you there's always two sides to a coin. As vile as certain characters may be, there's probably a side that makes them, if you never saw the other side, look like a decent man overall, right? And those are the moments that really let Blade of the Immortal flex its humanity, its humility, make it feel like it is more than just a bunch of body parts flying around, show it as if it's something that has meaning for its vileness, meaning for all the characters it introduces, and even if they do get killed off within an episode of being introduced, that death probably means something to someone in this series, and we'll probably get to see a reaction, get to see their character arc flourish eventually in the future. Those are the moments that really hook me with Blade of the Immortal, but whatever anyone is feeling, do let me know down in the comment section below, and if you did enjoy this video, be sure to drop a like, and be sure to hit that subscribe button if you have been new around here. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.